Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat. Explore together.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on June 5th, 2020 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat as we continue our discussion over the universe of Avatar: The Last Airbender. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the advanced session of the week's exploration. Congratulations to those who have signed up for a deeper dive. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. For this week, I'm also joined by two good friends. First up, we have Mochillama. Katie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm feeling dumb.
Aren't we all? I mean, this is like week 87 of lockdown, so like, whatever.
Week 87 of lockdown.
Yeah.
Next up is a returning guest co-host, InferMage Josh. How is the evening treating you in week 87 of lockdown?
I was able to get my cheap rum, so I'm feeling great.
Hey, cheap rum is no better than bottle of the Baron vodka. So you're no.
Well, let's jump right into it. I know we were just talking about the different groups of characters that we see within the Last Airbender story arc. Do we want to? How do we want to tackle? Do we want to go? Do we want to go alphabetical? Do we want to go by group? Like, how do you guys want to?
I think you should kind of go by the way the characters appear. So I would do Water siblings, Aang, and then Zuko, Iroh, Toph, like in the order that they appear in the show. But that's my opinion. What do you think?
That sounds like a great idea.
I mean, yeah, that's probably fine. I would like to talk about Toph earlier, but it's also okay to save the best for last.
That's exactly what I was going to
say. So that would mean, would it be Katara first, or would it be Sokka?
They're kind of in relate. What did you just say?
Sokka.
Nope.
Oh,
yep.
No.
Yeah, Sokka is
I don't know,
a sparkly vampire from a film that didn't happen.
You're gonna
Sokka is in Avatar.
Blue. Okay, go to Lake Laogai and come back when you're thinking.
Go where?
You really need to watch some more Avatar.
Yeah.
Get with the program.
The Water siblings.
It's pronounced with an.
That is making sense. Siblings doesn't have that in the.
Oh. Sokka.
Katara's got the first line in the series, according to Dino.
The first line, I don't know. I feel like it's probably her complaining to Sokka. I don't know the first line by heart. That's their relationship.
I mean,
is that kind of their relationship throughout the entire series? Is the relationship we see in the beginning?
Complaining to each other, loving and equal part, being annoyed just by their existence. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So siblings.
Yeah. Like normal siblings, though.
I guess that will
like
siblings that we'll talk. Yeah, I guess that is true. I realized as soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So Katara though is the waterbender.
Mm-hmm.
The sock man is not a waterbender, but he is a mechanic, right?
He's the token non-bender.
He would define himself as a warrior, but he Hey,
Continue. No,
if you think
continue.
about it, Team Avatar spans all the nations. An airbender, waterbender, firebender, and earthbender, and then there's a human, which everyone that is comprised in the universe. So it makes sense.
They're all humans.
Well,
I was about to ask. I was like, wait, hang on. My understanding just got really twisted up here. Wait a minute.
Midichlorians.
Oh, God. Okay. So,
man, is Iroh the Yoda of the show?
that would make total sense. And from the little that I've seen of him, I would completely accept that.
He's pretty much the Yoda, yeah.
So Katara and the other one,
Sokka,
that I'm always going to mispronounce anyways. Now that I'm trying to think about it,
We're gonna check in every 5 minutes and make you say it.
Yeah, that's fine. But he's a non-bender, but so he kind of has to make up for that with basically like technology. Is that a good explanation or a good way of saying it?
no.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. I mean, what is his strengths? What does he bring to the group?
It's funny because he was originally,
that's a big question.
yeah. He was meant to be a comic relief. No, it's okay. I get fiery about this. I get heated because a lot of people think Sokka's worthless, but I think the gang would have failed many times over and died if they didn't have Sokka on the team. Sokka he was originally written as a comic relief character who just is there, but as they wrote him, they realized that he's actually the leader, which is really interesting because he's one of the only teams that I know of where the Lancer or the sarcastic, surly, funny guy is a leader. But his first role is to look after his sister. That's why he goes, because he's not going to let Katara just run off with a 12-year-old kid. In ages, Sokka is 15, Katara is 14, and Aang is 12. So his role starts off as watching over his sister, but he really does take on the leadership role of reading the map. He also does a lot of fighting throughout. He has a club and he has a boomerang, and later he gets a sword and like a day and a half of sword training boot camp from a sword, which half of that day is crafting a sword. So really only a day of like advanced sword arts. But he's written as a comic relief, but he's actually a pretty valuable warrior, and he defines himself as a warrior many times over in the series.
Yes, as I think it was Dino said, a club to the head is still a club to the head.
Yes, exactly. And it actually is proven a couple times where Sokka does not want to do the planning or he's not available, that they kind of struggle to figure out what to do or what's the right thing to do. He's oddly the dorky comic relief character who acts like a ditz, but I think that's a TV trope, right? Like stupid genius or something where he acts dumb, but he's actually pretty clever. Yeah. A lot of artwork, and I was doing some calculating, and I think kill count in the show. So,
oh wow, really?
I mean, there are some characters who specifically do not kill, so that could be part of that.
But he says he doesn't kill, but does he? Does he really not kill?
Well, I did have that question.
Right, and I guess because Dancing's bringing that up too. There are two other kind of non-character or non-NPCs, I guess you would call them, Appa and is it Momo?
Oh, they're animals.
So, right, and Momo definitely seems to kind of take the limelight for the comical relief away from Sokka, kind of when he's in, because Momo's introduced.
He's an addendum.
Right, Momo is introduced at the time that Aang finds out the events of the air temple. So he was kind of like you were talking in the intro about like that kind of that parallel. Momo is the comedy that gets introduced in the middle of this tragedy. Yeah, so the Avatar series has a really weird, like, dare I say, fetish about blending animals together. Why?
I don't think that is the word that I would use.
Yeah, why do you combine a platypus and a bear? Because that is ungodly terrifying.
Bear is correct. The platypus bear is terrifying.
The best part of the best part about the platypus bear is when it scares or when they scare it, it lays an egg and runs away. I was like, did it just what? Like,
yep. Yes, it did.
Can you name all of the hybrid animals we meet?
I've only met a couple. There's the lemur, I think it was a lemur bat that Momo is, the platypus bear, the insect buffalo that is Appa.
Well, they just call him a sky bison, but you're clearly an insect.
Yeah, he's got 6 legs.
Got 6 legs and a carapace.
In Dallas, I one time I had taking a nap under a tree in Dallas, and I had something on my arm, and I thought it was fluff, and it was an insect that felt like fur. So that's totally where they got there. It's like some kind of caterpillar, and it bit me because I have that.
That sounds like a demon.
It was also a demon. No, but it's like a fluffy caterpillar that looks like.
Yeah. No, I know which one. I think those are moths.
Yeah.
Actually.
That's
not okay.
Where they got their inspiration for Appa, because that crapper bit me like red.
There's also the giant thing that has really good sense of smell. It's like a mole wolf thing.
Ursu?
That one.
Ursu?
That thing's absolutely terrifying.
And you forgot the saber-toothed moose lion.
I have not met that thing yet. Thank you for that nightmare fuel.
Its cubs are not discernible because they don't have the sharp teeth yet. Also, moose are really aggressive. If you grew up in New England,
moose are very aggressive, and they're big. But anyways,
and they smell bad. Right.
So Katara is the waterbender. Sokka, Sockman is not a bender, but he is a human, which is good. He's more of like the tactician, the dare I say brains of the outfit.
He doesn't think of himself
right, which actually, to be fair,
I don't think of himself as the brains either.
Josh is like, neither do I.
He has to be the brains because Katara is too busy being the mom, and Aang is 12, and he likes to play with marbles. So
oh my god, the marble! He's like, ah!
Out of necessity, he's the brain.
So that brings us to Aang. Aang is, we already kind of talked about Aang is the last Airbender. Obviously, that's the name of the series. But he's the Avatar, which means. So is there? I know when he meets, I think it's one of the Firebenders that he's trying to get to teach him. He tells him that he's not going to teach him because he hasn't learned the other elements. Is that connected to the Avatar cycle? Is that connection intentional?
Rephrase.
I think that is the cycle that he's supposed to learn.
Right. Because he has air and he needs to learn. He's supposed to learn water, then earth, and then he'll learn fire.
Mm-hmm.
And Aang kind of gets in an argument about it, but like that is that just a coincidence, or is that actually kind of the idea of the Avatar cycle?
What do you mean that they have to learn elements in a certain way?
He says because I can't remember the crazy fire dude, but he's the. Yes, yeah. He says that Aang isn't ready to learn the fire bending because he still hasn't mastered water or earth.
I think John has a fundamentally flawed understanding of fire, because we learned a very different definition. He views fire bending as essentially traumatic and dangerous, but when we learn from other masters, we see that fire bending is actually beautiful and important for other he has a very dangerous view of fire bending, but it's interesting that we get his view first. His view kind of corroborates Aang. When he's learning fire bending, he doesn't take it seriously. He's a very silly kid. Aang himself is a comic relief hero, and he accidentally burns Katara, so he vows never to fire. But so Jong just kind of corroborates Yeah, Mr. Dino Games saying it. Zhang seems to hate his own bending ability. He thinks it will always lead to destruction. He also is he's left the Fire Nation army. He's abandoned his
He's
post.
a deserter.
He also, he trained Admiral Zhao, who was a student. He was that master. So he seems to have a kind of corrupted view, but it's not necessarily wrong because the Fire Nation has led 100-year war. But I don't know that there's a certain order to learn the elements in it. I think it's all personal to the Avatar at the time.
I feel like, because I think it's outside of the series that we're talking about, but in Korra does pretty much learn the elements in the same order also. But I think that's more of a... Yeah. I think it's probably more of a traditional thing.
But it seems like there were especially in Korra.
Maybe. I don't know, because in Korra, like, she learns 2 of the elements like really fast in the first episode, and then she needs a lot of time to learn airbending, which is the last element for her, and which would also be the last element in this cycle because the previous Avatar was an airbender. I don't know, but I feel like it's probably more of a tradition thing, just because that's the cycle that the Avatars appear in throughout the cultures, and so like it's just expected that means that they're supposed to learn in that way. I feel like it's not necessarily required.
We don't know the order Avatar Roku learns in, but he says that water was really difficult. Actually, we do know. If I went back to says what order he learns it in, and he does say water was really hard for him to master. There's probably, you're right, they probably do learn it in the same order as the Avatar cycle.
Yeah, I didn't know if like, because, going back to like your idea of the spiritual connection, in order to master each type, you have to have a specific outset of, how you look at things. So, like, because you guys were saying all the air nomads, all kids in the air, or pretty much all kids in the air nomads would grow up to become airbenders. Whereas, like, with the water tribe, or at least the water tribe that we see in Last Airbender, Katara's the only bender. There's other kids. There's actually quite a gaggle of kids running around. But she is the only bender. And then within the Earth Nation, or the Earth... Is it Earth Kingdom? Is it Kingdom or
yes, Earth Kingdom.
Earth Kingdom. It's not like there was, well, and they have like, there's different things, but like there was the one village that had all the whole female force, the fighting force, and they all seemed to be benders, but they seem to be the only ones.
The Kyoshi warriors aren't benders, actually.
They're not? Artists. Okay. They're just martial artists? Okay. Well, then, yeah, because then there really wasn't any Earth... There haven't been a predominant number of Earthbenders that I've seen yet. There was, like, the crazy dude who tried to walk him through a canyon and got destroyed. And then Boomy. But, like, so, like, it just seems like, to me, it would be, like, a logical path of, like, you have to understand this... whatever place you start, that's going to be your primary starting point. So like Aang starts with airbending, and then next in the cycle is waterbending. So it's like the evolution of your personality goes through that cycle as well, is what I was kind of wondering if that's what was trying to be said there.
I mean, I feel like, especially with this like central idea of reincarnation in the Avatar cycle, like I feel like part of it is probably intended to be kind of this like relearning of your past self in those other things, but then it's interesting that it follows the same order as the cycle rather than like going backwards.
I'm also curious,
like fire is the last thing that Aang learned.
Well, so does Aang have the most difficulty learning Earth?
No.
Okay.
I mean, actually, he does have trouble learning it's completely contrary to what the way he perceives the world.
And it should be, because those, but I think going back to the classic elements, that would be the diametrically opposed element of air.
I think he struggles with fire because fire has hurt so many people. And by the time he does get a firebending master, he has already made a vow to himself not to use it. So he has to kind of change his mind about that. But I do think Earth is hard because he just has to assume the opposite position.
Well, because you had said, I think is it Roki?
Roku.
Avatar Roku.
The fire.
Yeah, he had the most trouble with water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know with does Korra have, or is she kind of like a prodigy of all of them?
Actually, Vero said it that Korra struggles with air, which is the element of the previous Avatar. That's an interesting point that I've never really considered before.
Oh, so that's interesting. But is she a waterbender initially?
She's a waterbender.
Okay.
And also she was able to firebend and earthbend very early on.
So she's kind of like
as an infant.
Oh, okay. So she's kind of like a prodigy that's outside of the normal anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And that brings us to, let's see, we got Aang, Katara, Sockman. Do we want to talk about
Aang,
what's that? Katara. We talked about Appa and Momo a little bit. What about would next be Zuko?
Yeah.
So what's going on with Zuko? What's his damage?
Well, he's voiced by Rufio from Hook.
Oh my god! Yes.
Yeah.
My already kind of like for his character just went up even more.
Dante
Zuko,
Basco, right?
Like even from what I've seen, like the limited episodes that I've seen, he is already grown. Does he continue on that? Does he actually does he grow the most out of all the characters?
I mean, well, the most.
Well, okay. I mean,
I don't know about the most.
Okay, that's fair.
It's not linear growth either, which is why Avatar is such a great series. No one grows linearly.
Correct.
They grow in a natural way, and they go forwards and back, positive and negative choices that are their own environment and situation. So Zuko has the most development, but he made, I would say, as many bad choices in the series as good.
Right. Which is fair, but I mean, he also comes from a very damaged situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think would be fair to say, right?
Issues.
Yeah, I mean, because the most prominent thing is like his face is a scar, right? It's the burn scar, and that actually was given to him by his father, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
who is the Lord of the Fire Nation. Am I remember that hierarchy correctly?
Yeah.
He's the head
Lord,
right now. The Fire Lord. Okay. Because I think we just recently saw that episode that kind of explained because I think Iroh was explaining to the guys on the ship. He's like, no, Zuko actually got that because he stood up for you, basically. So Zuko has been exiled at the start of the series, and up until that episode, we never really we never understood why. But he is now chasing.
We do understand why later.
Well, but until the episode with Iroh explaining it,
yes.
It wasn't. It was just like he was exiled, and everyone kind of was thinking that it was because he was spoiled. But then they kind of were like, no. And Iroh was the one that set the record straight on him or on that. But Zuko is obsessed with capturing the Avatar or killing the Avatar. Capturing. Okay. And then his intent, like, basically is to use that as a way to buy back into his father's good graces, I guess.
Well, he was specifically told that he would be exiled until he finds the Avatar. And
that's how he restores his honor and ends his banishment.
Got it. And that's where he runs into conflict with Zhao, right? It's because both of them are kind of chasing that prestige.
That's an interesting question because I don't think Zhao has the Avatar in his necessarily at first. I think he does it. I think at first he seems to do it just to F with Zuko more than anything. Zhao was present at the fight that disfigured Zuko's face.
Okay.
And he's a really repugnant character. He does many throughout his life, and he seems to take enjoyment out of the fact that Zuko is dishonored. Like, so he really enjoy rubbing salt in the wound that Zuko is the prince, but he's banished. He does not treat Zuko like a prince. He treats Zuko like any other minor, any minor person in the army. Like I think he calls him a spoiled brat wrong. Maybe I am wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's just his behavior.
That sounds like a Zhao thing to do.
Yeah, I would. He treats Zuko with the least amount of respect possible, and he treats Iroh with. He actually seems to respect Iroh to some degree. But Zhao, the way he behaves is not the way you would expect him to behave to a crown prince. And he only starts to look for the Avatar after he encounters, which I suspect is just an attempt to continue burnishing his crown and career.
Well, because I think part of that is also that, especially with the Fire Nation having wiped out the air nomads and Avatar not being seen in 100 years, I'm sure the expectation was kind of like, oh yeah, Uzziah's tossing Zuko out and he's never going to come back because that's a ridiculous thing that no one will ever be able to achieve because the Avatar is gone. So I think Zhao kind of steps in of the belief that the Avatar is not, the word just escaped me. The Avatar is just not a factor in whatever the Fire Nation needs to do. But once he learns that is a real thing, then he's all like, oh yeah.
It's also interesting to think about because, we learn later that Fire Lord Ozai has usurped his crown, that Iroh is the older brother and the crown was his. But for some reason, and we don't learn until very late in the series why Ozai was crowned the Fire Lord after the death of his father, Azulon. I don't know how to pronounce that, Azulon or Azulon. But it is interesting to consider that Ozai has two children, Azula and Zuko. Zuko is banished until he captures the Avatar. So you would think that and it is you're right, it is like a wild goose hunt in that no one has seen the Avatar in 100. But even after finding out that Zuko has seen him, you would think that he would assist Zuko. Instead, he really is self-centered and he has two different aims at some point. One is to capture the Avatar, the other is to blot out the moon, which we learn is possible later on in the series. But he'd had that goal for a long time. But considering that Ozai only has two children, Azula and Zuko, you would expect one of them to be considered the heir. And I'm wondering if Azula is not considered the heir, if there is some kind of sexism at play there, because why else would someone want so much to be the person who captures the Avatar and to do all the... If Azula not the person to inherit, and also Zuko not banishment and the lack of honor associated with him, it is interesting that he doesn't treat him with any respect at all. You would expect the oldest born son to be the next in line, but
we also don't see Azula at all in the first book, right?
But isn't she mentioned?
Probably.
I haven't heard about her yet.
I feel like we don't have any idea of what Azula is doing while this conflict is happening. That ends with Zuko and Zhao heading to the Water Tribe.
Mr. Dino Games made a good point, which is that Zhao takes over Zuko, which lets Zuko's own character develop. That's really true. He is this really evil character, almost unredeemable, and we learn more about, we find out that he's been planning to do this evil act for a while in book 2. He does take that role, which allows set off on his own path. However, he doesn't take that chance when he's in the final battle of One at the Northern Water Tribe. It's only through Avatar and the gang's actions that they survive that. I don't think Zuko makes any steps towards good at that point.
And what about Iroh?
He has a limited involvement in that part of the show. He is on a boat for most of that. But
for a long time, for a long time, we just see him as an advisor to Zuko, and kind of mediating.
He's really neutral.
Yeah, Zuko's circumstances with the rest of the Fire Nation. just kind of get hints at what an amazing and awesome character he is in book one. Learn more about him and where Iroh came from. Probably in book two.
I would love to know if they designed his character like that, or if, like Sokka, he grew into that role because he was so popular. Because in book one, he comes off as a really mild, silly kind of guy, but it's really in book 2 and 3, just like Sokka, that character.
I feel like especially in book one, like Zuko called him his uncle, but like I didn't like, especially when I was watching it, like I didn't have any concept of like, oh, like if he's the uncle and Zuko's this exiled heir, then that means that is Iroh the ruler or really close to the ruler? Like I that thought didn't even cross my mind. And then I feel like it's book 2 when we realize, oh, he's actually the older brother. He could have been the Fire Lord, and all of this stuff changed his circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, all of his history we learn by book 2 and 3, but for the most part, we're introduced to him in book 1 as an advisor, calm guy, kind of a frivolous. And Zuko, I think, calls him lazy in book 1.
Zuko's in book 1.
Zuko is hard to. He calls him like a lazy, superficial man. When you think about it, he got banished, and his uncle came with him. Like, he didn't have to be to a ship, but he chose to be. But Zuko can't really appreciate when we meet him.
I feel like there's this question of like how deep we want to go into beyond what you've seen, Blue.
Oh no, you feel free to go. I think that if it's within the last Airbender story arc, I think it's fair game. Like, don't worry about spoiling it for me. I'm used to filtering out spoilers all the time.
Good to know.
But I mean, so like with like Zuko and Iroh, especially because I think that it feels like they have a lot of development that gets put in later. I mean, go for it. I think that would be really interesting to hear about.
Do you want to talk about it, Josh?
Okay. Well, yeah. As chat says, Iroh is a tea addict and has certain scent to his feet. But so Iroh is the older brother of Zuko's father, the Fire Lord. Iroh was a very distinguished war general in the Fire Nation. He was known to be vicious, and like there's definitely like different points where we kind of see like other people in the Fire Nation have a large amount of respect for him typically. And it's because of his past. But ultimately his last campaign was against Ba Sing Se, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then his adult son was also in the military and ended up dying during the conflict. And then after his son passed away, Iroh made a very different shift in his life towards what we see throughout the show. And I feel like it's after that point that he becomes a better, I don't know, I guess we don't necessarily go into too much detail as far as like his education as a firebender, but I feel like it's after that point where he starts studying other bending philosophies, and becomes more open-minded and well-rounded and a lot more chill, basically.
Yeah, I think you're right. His trajectory changes after 10, which they have a memorial, both Iroh and Iroh's son and the voice actor for Iroh Mako, which I don't know his last name by heart. But they have in the second, the Tales of Ba Sing Se is like it's not a episode. It has multiple small episodes of different characters, including animals. So you can see like 5 or 6 different perspectives of this great city in the Earth Kingdom. And they have a memorial episode where Iroh is walking around the city and he is walking around the city buying stuff to celebrate his birthday memorial. It's one of the parts of the whole series, and I think that episode is really what represents why people Avatar so strong. They do a lot of storytelling with 5 or 6 different plots, and this one is deeply emotional, where he sings this point that's happy for a little child in the Earth Kingdom to make him stop crying, and then he goes and sings it again at his son's memorial, remembering his son's birthday. And part of the reason everything has some deeper meaning in Avatar, that was the last episode where Mako, okay, if I get it wrong, I think it's Iwamatsu, but I'm not sure, but the voice actor for Iroh was diagnosed with cancer, and that was the last recording he did, was the song Leaves from the Vine.
Oh, wow.
It is, any Avatar fan cry. It's just, he literally gets emotional in the song, and you can hear him as a voice actor struggle because he had just gotten his diagnosis when he recorded that. So it is really packed with meaning. But again, the episode is not like a typical fluff filler episode. It moves each character on their arc. But yeah, so Iroh, he comes off as the silly, vapid. Zuko even says it kind of like fourth wall breaking. You're just this shy, lazy old man. But he really is anything but that. He has come to peace with himself. He's come to peace with the fact that he doesn't fit in within his own family, which is pretty bloodthirsty, evil monarchy type family. He's rejected his family's path. He has his own path. He's so comfortable with himself that he can flow through any situation, whether he's just a traveler, where Zuko's used to being the crown prince and he can't handle these poor conditions. Iroh is always at peace as throughout their journey, whether he's eating food that people have given him, or he's a refugee, or he has his own tea shop. He fits wherever he goes. So he kind of stands out by book 2 as this character that's totally centered, totally comfortable with himself in his own element, and has made peace with his past, which is important for other characters later. Sorry, that was a lot too.
No, I think that's awesome.
He's one of my favorite characters for sure, and I think many. Yeah, that's true, Mr. Dino Games. The photo that they use for Lu Ten is based off of the voice actor when he was a young man, which again, there's always layers of detail with this show, whether it's animation or music or just the verse that they create. There's always layers of details that are so.
Well, talking about layers, this makes me nervous, but there's this other character that you guys wanted to talk about. I think it's an earthbender. I can't see it really clearly.
You mean the greatest earthbender?
Rude. Oh my goodness.
Is that what you're talking about?
So offensive.
So this is a very short earthbender by the name of, is it Toph?
Toph. Mm-hmm.
Toph Beifong, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Toph Beifong.
Flying board.
Yeah.
And so the big thing about Toph is that she is the one who teaches Aang how to earthbend. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
He wants to learn from his former friend Boomy, who Boomy has got to be ancient. If Aang is like 12 when he's frozen, so he's 100.
He's 112.
And then Boomy's still alive, so they're the same in 12. But he wants to learn from Boomy, but Boomy gives Aang a clue on what kind of earthbending teacher to find. Boomy is this kook, never does what's expected, and just always has this crazy idea. And he says earthbenders are always like formidable, strong, solid. But he says, look for a teacher who will listen before bend. So try to find one. And then he literally finds a teacher who has to listen and use their other senses because they can't. And that's tough.
And you're getting mad at me for blind puns?
I mean, Boomy is allowed to be rude because he's 112. So, excuse you? Wow.
So why is Toph a fan favorite?
She's a of course.
I love the absolute silence of Josh being like, how to best phrase this?
What is this question? Oh my goodness, you need to watch more. You don't understand.
Toph is a honey badger.
Yes. So like Team Avatar like heads into the Earth Nation to try and find Aang a earthbender tutor or whatever, and find a bunch of people, and like end up at like this like earthbendy like wrestling match situation underground or whatever.
Yep.
And then they're all like, oh, like maybe we can get one of those people to tutor Aang. And then the last warrior of the earthbendy wrestler people ends up being Toph, this tiny little, I don't know, 12-year-old little girl. And she's just like, it's just a fact.
It's just a fact.
I mean, when we meet her, we're expecting her to. We don't expect her because we're going to this like basically WW underground battle, and they even do this awesome thing where the voice actor for this super powerful earthbending warrior called the mountain, right?
The boulder.
The boulder. You're right. The boulder. I'm thinking strange guy. I was thinking of Game of Thrones. I haven't even watched Game of Thrones, but I was reading about it. No, the
Why?
boulder. He uses that Randy voice from WWE, like the boulder doesn't like your what you're saying. Like the boulder feels conflicted about fighting a titan, and then she's like, I guess I would feel conflicted too. The pet immediately starts taking crap and like dissing him, and she's this tiny blind person. The boulder no longer feels conflicted, so they have like even the voice acting is like referring to these like large personas, and Sokka is super into it from the side, like he's just all into the WWE aspect, and then Toph takes him out before he can even move. Like we see this animation shift where he's about to move, and then we go to this slow motion frame scene, and as he's moving we see like these light waves go through him and go to her and go up her, which is her perceiving him moving because she feels through her feet through, and then before he can finish his move she kicks, and a wave of, which is one of the coolest bending visualizations, is a wave of rocks goes and knocks him down, so he ends up in a full split before he could finish his move against her. So she, like almost by proxy, like he doesn't even get to move, which is why she's and that basically throughout the series she just is inventive. She is faster than everyone else because she can figure their own movements and pre-act, and she's very rarely beat. I think she holds her own against many different types of warriors and benders.
And plus, like she's so good as an earthbender. Like she can feel the vibrations of other people to the point that she can tell. Like she can act as her own lie detecting test. By just being able to feel the pulses of other people through the earth
and breathing. Yeah, she says she can monitor their breathing and heart rate. So she's their lie. She can tell when people are following them. She can tell the difference between different people. Like she recognizes, she meets Iroh when she gets angry and walks away and bumps into him, and then she recognizes him again later, which is really cool.
She also apparently gives people's nicknames.
Yeah.
Aang is Twinkle Toes.
And
because as the last airbender, he's very light on his feet.
His light. Yeah, no, I got it. I got it, Josh. I got it.
And she calls Katara Sugar Queen, but that's a bad nickname because Katara's nickname should really be Mom. She's the mom of the group, you know? She just moms everyone to death. And it's not a bad thing. I think Sokka tries to be dad, but actually Zuko ends up being the dad. But Katara really is the mom for sure.
So I guess, and that kind of... Or go for it, Josh.
Well, I was just going to say that's part of why Toph has conflict with Katara, because Toph has not the best relationship with her family.
Yeah.
Not that it's like bad, just that like they didn't want her to leave home because they thought that they had a earthbender tutor for their daughter, like just as like a pastime, and didn't realize that they didn't realize that she was this amazing earthbender, and didn't believe that was the case. So she just kind of goes off on her own, because she's wanting to prove herself, and because she already knows she's the greatest earthbender ever.
She's interesting because she's really. I have this theory that the more in alignment with your element, the better your character does in the show. That if you're out of alignment with your element, you're going to fail, and if you're in alignment, then you're going to succeed. And Toph has the least character development of anyone in the show. She comes in and she knows who she is, and really kind of development episodes. One where she's Katara wants her to help look for firewood and set up camp, but she's like, nope, I don't need your help. I did everything on my own, or anyone else. And that show, it actually isn't, in that episode, it isn't super resolved. They don't really say, okay, from now on you're gonna set up camp while Sokka gets food and I'll look for. They don't really solve it, but she's really not part of the team to kind of add her to this mentality. And then later she has this girls episode where Katara wants her to just be girly with her, and Toph is not a girly girl. She actually enjoys doing the girly things, like going to the spa. And that character development, she doesn't grow. She explains to Katara, my appearance doesn't matter. I don't need, I can't see myself, so there's putting stock in what I look like. And Katara is like, well, it just so happens that you're really, and that makes Toph happy, but it doesn't change her as a character. She's a very solid state person who needs very little development. Even through Legend of Korra, she changed very much, which is really interesting from a character point of view. She's so solidly developed from the very beginning.
So she's kind of like Iroh, right? Because Iroh doesn't really sound like he changes much from when we see him. Like he changes in the past, but because you were saying Iroh's already kind of come to grips with who he is and what his past is and all that.
I would agree with that. I mean, even though she's a tiny little, probably also 12-year-old,
right. But I mean, from a character,
Iroh.
From a character standpoint, she and Iroh are very similar in that they are very, very secure in their element. But then I guess the follow-up question there is what does that mean for the Avatar? How can you be secure in your element when you are all elements? What does that mean for the Avatar?
Well, Aang is kind of interesting because he should go with the flow. That's the philosophy of the air nomads, as we understand it, is that they're peaceful, they're not. I mean, he says all the time that the monks taught him to be unattached. And he gets a guru later on who tells him he has to let go of all of his attachments, which Aang is kind of hard to pin down there because he never, from the beginning, he's never at one with his original bending, which is air bending, because he's very stubborn and he also shirks his duty. He doesn't go with the flow. He runs from the flow. He has guilt for this later, but and we understand why. He literally abandons his post because he's scared of what he'll have to do as the Avatar, not being able to accept that he can't just play ball with his friends anymore. So he runs away, and because of that, nation gets murdered by the Aang is hard to pin. I really thought a lot about this, but his character development is probably the most intricate, I would say, of any of them, in that he is at times peaceful. He is always peaceful. He doesn't want to kill people, but he told by accident, maybe he doesn't think about it. But
but also in a Nickelodeon way where we probably can't really confirm that they're dead. Maybe they're just unconscious.
Yeah. They're just off the screen.
If we had more episodes from Azula or Zuko, see what
we would
they leave
totally
behind
see
as
people
they
on
walk.
fire.
Yeah, totally. There'd be a line of. No, isn't he hard to pin down, Josh? Like, he's actually pretty stubborn, and he fights with all of his masters. Like, he disagrees with them strongly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a very like air characteristic in that, in kind of like finding your own path. But I think that also has to do with his avatarness, because I think like in talking about like these characters that are very stable and solid within their likeness to their like elemental nature, he has to have all four elements within him, and he has to find a balance and harmony.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of, I don't know, maybe like Eastern philosophy kind of balance and harmony kind of aesthetic, but then also like Western medieval alchemical philosophy in terms of like, oh yes, like when you have this understanding of the four elements and how they make up everything and how they're all interconnected, and you can't weigh one more than the other, then you kind of self-actualize and become this greater thing.
Right. Well, and so he also has like a time clock also that he has to, hey, find self-center yourself. That normally takes like, years, but you have, I can't remember, like it's like 3 months or
year,
it's like you have to do this in 2 months. Good luck. And it's like, wait, what? Like I'm 12. Like what?
Yeah. Poor Aang.
I mean, I think that kind of works with my theory too, though, because Airbender, we see Gyatso's skeleton, which is a really rough moment for.
Right.
He doesn't have parents; he has monks who raise him, which is super interesting and kind of dystopian. Monks raise all of the Airbenders versus their parents. So his closest friend was Gyatso, and don't we learn later that Gyatso had a connection with Roku, that they were friends? But monk
sounds
Gyatso
familiar.
is like, he's the one most protective of Aang. Like the other no really worried about the Fire Nation, and they just want him to train. Gyatso's like, let's take these pies and throw them out the window, and they'll land on.
I saw that episode. He's like, and go. Your aim is getting better.
Yeah. So he's this kind of lovable old dude who is really protective of Aang's age. Like, he understands that we're at war, but he doesn't want Aang to like ceaselessly train, because he understands that Aang is still a child. So, child actor laws, child labor laws. He can't.
That okay.
She's like, wasn't expecting that one, but okay.
But like, what, he can't healthily just dive into this war, being
right.
Mindful of his age. It's not appropriate. What kind of avatar would be so non-emotional, non-healthy? So Gyatso is protective, wisely protective, because Gyatso is arguing, and Aang hears that the other monks are going to be away from Gyatso because they think he's a bad influence. He's not letting Aang reach his potential. Gyatso convinces them
also,
to let
they're
him stay.
running out of pies.
Yeah. Well, convinces them to let him stay, but by the time he goes to find Aang, only heard that they were going to send him away from his friend who's like protecting. So he abandons the temple before he can really tell Aang that, no, you're actually going to stay. And if he had heard it, obviously the thing would have turned out. He wouldn't have left the air temple. Well, actually, it might not have turned out differently. He might have just been murdered because he only knew airbending at that point.
Yeah, the show would have ended. We would have skipped ahead to Legend of Korra. There wouldn't be like technological advances.
Maybe
no.
Katara would have been the next waterbender avatar. But to your point, Josh, I think Aang doesn't have to be aligned with his element because he does have all four. So maybe it's more that he has to be aligned with his core values, which he does by the end of the show, staying aligned.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like part of that is a very like air-like quality, though, because it's air doesn't necessarily have a course that it has to follow. Like it will follow a course if it's made to, but sometimes like Earth will air will just like what is the analogy I'm trying to think of?
It's not something that can get pinned down because it's ethereal. It's it's not gonna, you can't pin air down. That's the whole point of it, is that it's something that will go where it needs to go or where it's directed. But even then, if it finds a gap somewhere, it will escape. Like, and that's where with Aang's character, I definitely see that, because like it's like if you've ever, I don't know, like it makes sense to me because I'm thinking like air ducts. If you ever have like an air duct that you're trying to fix or whatever, if you have one small hole in that air duct, the air is it's just gonna go out, and it's just gonna keep going. It's not gonna care. You have to actually like, block it in completely to get it to go where, quote unquote, you want it to go. But well, I think that's a good place to wrap up and start looking at shoutouts for the advanced session. So Katie, you got any shoutouts for us this time around?
Shoutouts for who?
The advanced session. You have any shoutouts for us for this episode?
Anna?
Fair enough. All right.
Anna's birthday.
Josh, what about you?
Shout out to my cabbages once again, because they're probably gone.
They're destroyed.
They're destroyed.
My poor cabbages.
My cabbages.
Why? The cabbage crisis. Oh man. Well, I wanted to take this and say again thank you to both of you. I think that I'm interested if I can coerce Katie into maybe writing an article about Avatar, or Josh, maybe we can get one from you. I think both of you would have some really good insights into some of the characters. Hint, Josh.
All I heard was silence. There was just like long silence. Where that suggestion went. It's like it just flew away.
Oh man. So for everyone who's listening in the live chat, thank you again for your time. And until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusedFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at FocusedFireChat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.